Behind us is the Mary Baker Engen Restoration Hangar at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum's Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center in Chantilly, Virginia.
Here they work on large artifacts like airplanes, satellites, and sometimes X-wing fighters.
At the museum, we also have the Emil Buehler Conservation Lab that works on smaller things like spacesuits, paintings, and even an elephant tracking collar.
This elephant tracking collar is in the museum's collection. It shows real-world uses of space-age technology, like satellite communication.
Devices like this collar are placed on animals to track their movements and aid scientists in the study of animal behaviors. This non-invasive method allows researchers to obtain information remotely and nearly instantly from out in the wild.
Today we're going to learn all about animal tracking and how the aerospace industry helps to track and conserve animals.
And Beth and I have our own coordinates to track down. Beth's should lead her to the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., and mine should take me to the Conservation Biology Institute out in Front Royal, Virginia. Well, see you later.
Oh, hi, you made it. Where have you been?
Hi, Caden. I'm sorry. Let's just say that tracking is not in my skill set. But you are going to teach me about animal tracking and conservation today.
Absolutely. It's going to be so fun. So welcome to the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute, where we have researchers, scientists, and animal care specialists all working together to study lots of different animals, tracking where they go, and they're using some really cool technologies to do so.
This is going to be wild.
Absolutely. This is STEM in 30.
Let's go.
Let's do it. We are currently at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., which is 163 acres, or about the size of 124 football fields, and home to more than 2,000 animals representing almost 400 species. The zoo has been around for a long time. It was founded in 1889. One of our famous residents was the original Smokey Bear. Smokey was a black bear cub rescued from a forest fire in 1950, and he was named after the forest fire prevention character. Some of my favorite animals here at the zoo are the sloth bears, naked mole rats, and our many species of salamanders. All the animals here are part of our conservation efforts, which means these animals are here to educate people about their species in the wild and what we can do to protect them and their habitats. We also have a location in Front Royal, Virginia, called the Conservation Biology Institute. There we have species that are endangered or critically endangered, and are part of a breeding programs to save their species. Two examples are the black-footed ferrets and scimitarred horned oryx, which both have reintroduction programs. We breed and raise their young here in Virginia, and then release them back into their native habitats to boost their wild population. Welcome to the birdhouse. Here we have 3 free-flight aviators that have migratory birds all throughout the Americas.
I am so excited to be here.
Let's go. If we're talking about flight, we have to start with animals that fly. Each aviary is themed to a different habitat that is critical to migrating birds. Our Delaware Bay aviary represents the eastern shore of the United States, where shorebirds stop along their spring migration, moving from their winter habitat to their summer breeding habitat. Our coffee farm represents a South American rainforest where coffee plants naturally grow under the shaded canopy, which is an important habitat for migrating birds who spend their winter there. And our prairie pothole aviary represents their summer in the American prairie region, or the Midwest of the United States, where ducks breed and raise their ducklings in large pools of water formed from snowmelt. Here's some of our ducks.
I'm glad that we're here because ducks play an important role in aviation history.
Really? Why?
While ducks can fly on their own, a duck was one of the first animals to go up in a hot air balloon.
Wow.
Today, when we think of hot air balloons, we imagine brightly colored cloth balloons filled with people floating across the sky. But did you know that there was a time when it wasn't known if flying was safe for humans? To answer this question, we have to travel back in time to the late 1700s, and we have to travel to France. It was here that two brothers began experimenting with hot air balloons. The Montgolfier brothers had been building and flying small hot air balloons for several years, and after a series of successful full-scale tests in 1782, it was time to take to the skies in their creation. But was it safe for humans? At the time, it was unknown if people could survive even at low-level flight. So the brothers devised an experiment and an event. On September 19th, 1783, the brothers set up an exhibition of their new balloon at Versailles, which would, for the first time, carry living creatures. Among the thousands of attendees would be Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Chosen to take this historic flight were a duck, a sheep, and a rooster. All three animals successfully traveled and returned in the hot air balloon, and animals have been joining people on flights ever since. Today, animals travel on planes for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's a pet joining their owners. Sometimes it's animals being flown from one zoo to another. Many animal populations are declining, and zoos are working to save them by contributing to breeding efforts that create a new generation of animals called an insurance population. Sometimes this means moving animals from one place to another for breeding programs. The National Zoo has transported giant pandas to and from China on airplanes. In 2023, giant pandas Tian Tian, Mei Xiong, and Zhao Qi flew to China on a FedEx Panda Express Boeing 777F aircraft. They traveled in special crates along with over 200 pounds of bamboo. Flying machines are also used in other conservation efforts. A group called Operation Migration used a two-seat ultralight to lead flocks of whooping cranes along new migration routes up to 4,025 kilometers or 2,500 miles long, from Canada to the southern United States. In 2017, a rejected tiger cub was flown from the National Zoo to the San Diego Zoo, where it was paired with another parentless cub who was confiscated by the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, being brought into the United States from Mexico illegally. The tiger flew in the main cabin with the rest of the passengers, who each got a small stuffed tiger. Other animals that have taken to the skies with the help of aircraft include orcs, rhinos, and whales. Animals will continue to take to the skies in conservation efforts.
This is the elephant house, and they're getting ready to do some training. So let's go watch.
Yeah. Oh, there's an elephant.
Yeah.
We are joined by Debbie, who's an elephant keeper. Thank you so much for joining
You're
us
welcome.
today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us who's behind us here?
This elephant's name is Swarna. She's a 49-year-old Asian female elephant.
And there's some training going on. Can you tell us what they're doing?
There is some training going on. Today we're going to be putting on a GPS tracking bracelet. She's well trained for that. So essentially we're just practicing, reminding her how easy that is. Becky is the elephant keeper who's working with her, the handler, and Becca is going to be applying the bracelet.
And what does the bracelet do?
The GPS tracking bracelet gives us a lot of information in the zoo about how the elephants use their indoor and outdoor space, all of their exhibits, what hay boxes they prefer, or what pools they prefer, or even what elephants they prefer to spend their time with.
And does this help wild elephants?
Very much so, because one of the main problems we have is that especially where Asian elephants live, the vegetation is so dense, it's very hard to follow them around in a vehicle, even in a motorcycle, and certainly on foot. So if you have a GPS tracking bracelet, you can track them without following them through the woods. And get all of that same information in a much larger space.
Do satellites figure into some of this tracking devices?
Yeah, so it is GPS, it's satellite tracking, and that way the information goes from the bracelets to satellite tracking to scientists who can look at all this data and give us all the information.
What's your favorite part of working here?
The individual relationship with an elephant is incredible. From a selfish point of view, being out in this space, speaking to the public, and having an elephant recognize you in the group and call out to you, or, to be recognized, acknowledged, and preferred by the elephants to come and spend time with them, but also just making sure that the elephants every single day are getting the best care that I can possibly give them, no matter what's going on in the day. How can that not be satisfying?
Tell us a little bit about this anklet. Is that what it's called?
We call it a bracelet. Anklet, I'm sure, is just fine as well. So this is the actual GPS tracking bracelet that Swarna was wearing just a moment ago. It's heavy, really heavy duty webbing, really heavy duty stitching, and then nice, easy, soft, rounded metal links, and we use this C-clamp that spins. And then this plate comes off. It has hardware that keeps it together because the elephants are extremely dexterous, and then it has a pocket in it, and then a GPS tracking bracelet is slid into the pocket and then resecured. And then we ask the elephant to pick its leg up, and it's quite large. It's quite large. It is quite large. But it's super comfortable, and if we had an even larger elephant, like maybe an African elephant, it would be even bigger.
But these are not the devices that wild elephants wear, correct?
Nope, these are not the devices. As I was saying, elephants' trunks are over 150,000 muscle and tendon groups. Tip of their trunk so dexterous that they can pick up a single grape. And so you would be surprised at how they could just work on this, and eventually I'll bet you they'd be able to tear it apart. So instead of using bracelets for wild elephants, we've come across a technique using a tracking collar. So all of this equipment is extremely heavy. It is weighted so that it will stay, the GPS part will stay at the top of the back of the elephant's neck, and the collar will go hang underneath of them. A lot of elephants have like a dewlap, extra skin, so we wanted to make sure that was comfortable. And we were chosen and so happy to be able to test this specific radio tracking collar on an elephant. She wore it 365 days. We asked her to lie down several days a week so that we could check and see if she had any abrasions or wears or any problems or difficulties with the collar, and to make sure that all the hardware stayed good and strong and tight. She would swim in it, mud in it, play with other elephants, sleep in it. We'd bathe her in it, give her scrub bath. We really wanted to see if it will hold up, and it really, really did. And then what's really terrific about it is it's also, while being made to hold up to a lot of elephant wear and tear, it also has an ability after a while, as the elephant grows, that it does start to come apart. It's meant to. It starts to come apart, and then the radio tracking collar will drop off. And then as the elephants move away, the scientists are using the tracking equipment or satellite equipment to find where the collar is. They can go pick it up and retrieve all the information.
That is fascinating.
And this is just an elephant's neck.
So big.
Huge.
That is incredible. It's so great, all the research you do here at the zoo. Thank you for showing us this wonderful tracker. Now, elephants aren't the only animals that wear tracking devices, correct?
That's right. We have another location out in Front Royal, Virginia, called the Conservation Biology Institute. And scientists track and study many different animals, including one of my favorites, the scimitar horned oryx.
Let's go out to Front Royal and see what scientists are doing out there.
Hey, Catherine, how you doing?
Good. Did you have any trouble finding us?
Not at all. The coordinates were perfect. This is Catherine Murtis. She's a research ecologist. Tell us what that means.
It can mean a lot of things, but what it really means is I study wildlife and nature.
What kind of animals do you study?
Well, my main project right now is reintroducing 2 species of dryland antelope into a large protected area in Africa.
Wow, and how do you do that?
Well, it takes a lot of work, a lot of teamwork, and we use collars like this to see where animals go after we release them into the wild.
That's awesome. Tell me about this.
So this model is about 1 kilogram. It goes on animals who weigh about 200 kilograms, so it doesn't weigh them down too much. This part has a GPS modem, so it collects locations from GPS satellites. It also has a satellite modem, so it sends us those positions via the Iridium Communications satellite network. And this here is an enormous battery pack that powers all the electronics in the collar.
This data goes to a satellite and then comes to you.
That's right. Comes to me right in this building, the GIS lab.
Can we go take a look at that?
Absolutely.
Let's go. Catherine, what are we looking at?
So this right now, we're looking at the whole of Africa. And if I zoom in, I can show you where scimitar horned oryx and addax have been released since 2016. So this is the country of Chad, and right in the middle of Chad is a huge reserve the size of Maine called the Reserve de Faune de Wadi Rime Wadi Hashim, and that's where our reintroduction project is based. These are both scimitar horned oryx and addax, and all these different colored lines show where different animals have been moving over the past 3 weeks. And you can see all the different tracks where every point is a GPS position collected by a GPS collar, and all the lines just connect those different positions, and then we can see the identities of the animals. So here we're looking at about 30 animals, and the total population is around 550 animals, and then the total number of tracked individuals is about 80 across 2 different species.
And how often do you get a data reading?
So the collars themselves collect a position every 4 hours, but they only communicate with the satellites every 20 hours because we want to save battery as much as possible.
So in 20 hours, you'll get 4 different locations, 4 or 5 locations.
Exactly. And you can turn on, we've got ostrich, we've got dama, we've got oryx, and we've got addax from all the different release groups since 2016. So we actually go back out into the field and attach collars to animals who have been released for longer to see if they behave differently from newly released animals. So we can turn on and off all these different tracks and positions and compare what they're doing over time.
And how does that help the animals that are there?
So this gives us the ability to monitor them in the wild. Otherwise, this is a huge landscape with, again, no paved roads, size of Maine. How would we ever find animals in this vast expanse of really sub-desert grassland? From 2000 to December 2023, the scimitar horned oryx was completely extinct in the wild. There were a couple smaller scale reintroduction projects, but just a couple months ago, the species was reduced from extinct in the wild to endangered. So that was also an amazing opportunity to work with the species and try to actually restore them to their native range.
And did the work you did here contribute to that?
Directly, absolutely. It's the reason they're no longer extinct in the wild.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for showing us all of the data today.
Thank you so much for coming to learn about this awesome project.
Let's head back over to the zoo with Beth and Caden.
So here at the National Zoo, we have Asian elephants, but there are different types of elephants, correct?
Absolutely. There's also African elephants. So the biggest difference is they're found in 2 different places, Asia or Africa. But if you're looking at them right next to each other, you can also tell them apart with a few different things. The Asian elephants like we have here are smaller. They have a rounded back. Their ears are much smaller than African elephants. And their tusks. Only the males have tusks with Asian elephants, and African both can have tusks.
We have learned how aircraft move animals around the world, but they are also used to monitor animals in the wild. In 2001, famed aerobatic pilot Patty Wagstaff began training pilots of the Kenya Wildlife Service in East Africa to help protect African elephants. As an aerobatic pilot, Patty is skilled at flying planes in all sorts of ways. Sideways, loops, even upside down. She used these skills to teach Kenyan pilots how to fly in ways that helped conserve elephants. We got a chance to talk to Patty about some of these amazing skills these pilots learn.
Hi, I'm Patty Wagstaff. I'm a pilot. I do all kinds of flying. I fly air shows all over the country, all over the world. I've flown competition, aerobatics. I fly for fun. I fly personally to get places, and I also volunteer with the Kenya Wildlife Service Air Wing, where I've been training pilots there for over 20 years. More than 20 years ago, I received a letter from a Dr. Bill Clark, who's an internationally known wildlife conservation expert and also a pilot. And Bill had decided to contact me because I was a flight instructor and because I don't fly air shows in the winter, and that's when the dry season in Kenya is. So Bill asked me if I would like to donate my time to come and help train the Kenya Wildlife Service pilots. Kenya Wildlife Service is a very well-organized organization. It's a paramilitary organization in Kenya. It was started by Dr. Richard Leakey, a very famous anthropologist. The pilots of the Air Wing patrol all of the national parks in Kenya. There's over 20, and there's a number of preserves there. They've been very, very dedicated to their amazing resources of animals. Bill asked me if I would help train these pilots because they were having a lot of accidents at the time. I did some research and I met Bill, who turned out to be a wonderful person, and I started training the pilots with him, and I brought another instructor with me in 2001, and we've been doing this program ever since. I was very interested in the animal aspect, the conservation aspect of the program, and that was the main reason that I wanted to go to Kenya, of course, were the animals, and I'd always heard wonderful things about how beautiful it was. The idea of combining aviation with saving animals and conserving animals was just irresistible. It's kind of a lonely life being a patrol pilot. You know, they will send a pilot out to a national park where there's a ranger station and an airstrip and maybe a few other buildings. It depends on where they are. But some of the, they're pretty small, some of these places, and they're sort of out there by themselves patrolling around twice a day. They take off in the morning, they fly 2 hours looking for animals, counting, making sure there's no injured animals, signs of poaching, maybe lost tourists even, that type of thing. So I believe this program's been successful because we have been back a number of times. I brought some excellent instructors with me that have made, I think, a lasting impression on these pilots. And again, I think when you get all these pilots together in from different areas of the bush, from national parks and so on, and you get them all together, I think it's a huge boost in their confidence. I think that they are validated. I also think they become really, really good pilots. There are a number of pilots there now with the high time bush pilots who have done very well, and I believe that this training has been part of that success.
We have learned about using satellites, drones, stunt planes, and even commercial airlines that have been used to protect the largest animals like elephants to the smallest ones like birds.
Yeah, that was so fun. And this is a great spot if you're a casual bird watcher to check out different birds. My favorite bird here at the zoo is Yona, our Guam kingfisher. These birds are actually extinct in the wild because of a tree snake that was introduced to the island, and it would climb the trees and eat the eggs and the birds. But luckily, zoos had taken some in and a breeding facility, so they still exist and they aren't totally extinct. Now, we're looking at breeding these so we can release them in some of the islands nearby that don't have the snake so they can succeed.
You can watch birds from anywhere, even in a big city.
Marty, are you ready to go birding?
Absolutely, I am looking so forward to it. This is Dara Miles Wilson. She is a birder. Dara, what's a birder?
So a birder, sometimes called a bird watcher, a birder is a person who essentially goes out and enjoys or appreciates birds. You don't have to be an ornithologist to be a birder. You don't have to really enjoy being outside a bunch. If you have an appreciation for wildlife, and especially an appreciation for the small little critters that flap around and make these chirping sounds, then you're a birder in my book.
Do you have to be in the woods to be a birder?
I really like that question because a lot of people, and myself included, I used to think that I had to be out in the wilderness to see wildlife, and that's simply not the case. No, you don't have to be in the woods. You can be in your backyard, you can be in an urban environment, you can even be on the National Mall.
Yeah, we're right here in Washington, D.C. with the Washington Monument right behind us. You can hear all of the sounds of the city. We've had sirens and dump trucks and construction. It's kind of incredible there are birds here. Dara, who can bird?
Anybody can bird, Marty. We can bird. Your friends can bird, your parents can bird, your kids can bird. Anybody can be a birder. And you don't, even though we're really lucky to have these super cool tools right here, binoculars, you don't need really expensive binoculars to be able to go birding. What I really love are, I really love tools that are really easy and very available to almost anybody. If you have a phone, you have this tool. It's an app called Merlin. And I equate this to a Pokedex. If anybody played Pokemon, you know, you'd hold up that Pokedex and then it tell you what you're seeing. This, you hold it up, it hears a sound, it tells you what you're hearing with like a 99% accuracy rate. So that's really cool, and that's a very crucial tool for learning.
That's awesome. What about sketching? Do you make sketches of birds to keep track of what you've seen?
I personally don't, because I'm not the best artist. I like taking pictures, but I have some really good friends who are really, really prolific artists. And in fact, that's how early on, when we were first learning about birds, we learned by sketching them. We learned by making observations on what are we seeing, what are their character traits.
How can a kid get into birding?
So the easiest way for a kid to get into birding, I'd say, would just be to look outside of your window or any place where you like to visit and start listening to different sounds of different birds. And start to notice when you hear a sound of a bird, for example, try and identify that bird. Pretty soon you're going to start associating, oh, this bird makes this sound. Do that for about like just a few bird species, and very quickly you will start to see, wow, there's a lot of birds right around me.
Dara, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for teaching me about this, but can we go do some birding?
Yes, please.
Let's go. All right, so let's look at the heron over there, and then I'll just kind of do it.
There's a heron over there? Oh, there's a heron over there.
Look at me.
Oh,
I'm finding the birds.
Yeah, that's a great blue. Oh.
They're beautiful.
They are. Also, terrifying. They're the great white sharks of the sky. Like, seriously. That's not an exaggeration. Those are terrifying birds, but beautiful.
Well, Dara, thank you so much for birding with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This is really fun. What I love about birding is I can get lost in it, and we had a great time.
We did. Now let's head back over to Caden and Beth at the zoo.
Birding is a great and easy hobby to start.
Absolutely. All you have to do is go outside and look for birds. But one thing that I like to do to make sure to help birds while I'm birding is make sure to look at your windows around your neighborhood.
Like these windows?
Absolutely. So birds see the reflection of the sky in windows and sometimes can fly into them. So we need to break up that reflection. You can add lines like this, 2 inches or less apart. You could finger paint decorations on your windows, hang up decals, anything that will break up the reflection.
The great thing about birding is that you can start out easy, and then as you hone your skills, you can go to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. Let's see how to level up while birding. Are you interested in birding? It's an easy hobby to start, and it's also easy to level up. Level 1. To get started as a birder, all you really need is an outdoor space, your eyes and/or your ears, a notebook, and something to write with. Find a nice place to sit and just observe the birds you can see and hear. Take some notes. Write down the sizes and the colors of the birds. Listen to their songs and calls. Write down what they sound like to you. Once you have some data, you can research online or at the library to identify the birds that you took notes on. And maybe that's all you want to do. But if you really like this, maybe it's time to level up. Level 2, binoculars and guides. You can find binoculars online, in birding stores, and many times in thrift stores or at garage sales. You can spend a lot of money or not too much depending on what you want. Next, a bird book. Field guides are nice, and many of them have a checklist so you can mark off when you ID a new bird. There are also apps that can help you identify birds and their calls. Be sure to keep your ears tuned. If this is enough for you, great. But if not, you can level up. Level 3. Find your peeps. Join a club or become a community scientist. There are hundreds of birding clubs around the country, and a lot of them sponsor walks in local parks and festivals. In many communities, these clubs offer hands-on opportunities, like helping at banding stations, doing raptor counts, monitoring birdhouses and nesting areas, or even aiding with rehabilitation efforts. You can also volunteer for the birds as a community scientist. Level 4. Who knows what's next? Level 4 could be studying ornithology, avian medicine, or even being an ostrich farmer. Caden, thanks for showing us around the zoo today. It has been a lot of fun.
No problem. Thanks for coming to the National Zoo.
You've given us the royal treatment. We are going to end today by showcasing some of our favorite animals.
Thanks for watching.